age is characterized by democratic form of political system, an egalitarian society, and an industrial mode of production. Nation state forms the basis to this modern democratic political system. What is this nation state? If you talk about the nation and the state, both of them have a separate meaning altogether. Nation comprises of an idea, cultural unity, tradition, history that holds a community together, a feeling of brotherhood. Some call it as an imagined community. Some call it as a historical tradition. And state is the framework, or I would say the political, administrative, legal, military, the entire bureaucratic framework within which the government functions. So when we talk about nation state, it forms the basis to the modern political system. Before understanding the constitution, the ideology of the state, it becomes very important to understand the inherent idea on which nationhood is realized. So it becomes very important for all of us to understand the idea of India. This idea of India was a gradual evolution in the modern age. Let us understand how this idea evolved. The British who came to India as traders got established themselves as a political power via Treaty of Allahabad 1765. This was followed by a policy of Orientalism. That is, the Britishers, they wanted to learn about the native language, culture. So they wanted to learn more about Orient. So they established Asiatic Society of Bengal. They tried to learn Sanskrit. They tried to learn Indian languages, Indian customs. But they gradually moved away from this policy and replaced it with Anglicization. With the advent of Lord Cornwallis, we saw that the British, they started practicing racial discrimination and they claimed racial supremacy of the white. They popularized the white man burden theory, that the white men, they were sent to India for a mission so as to emancipate the people of India from darkness. So the white man burden stated that the white man was on a mission to civilize the world. In the 19th century, Charter Act of 1813 allowed the evangelicals to carry out missionary activities, to propagate Christianity. And following this evangelicalism, we saw, following the Charter Act of 1833, there was liberalism, utilitarianism, where industrialization and all forms of free market economic cultures were being promoted. So Lord Macaulay famously stated that the entire objective of the British was to have a brown man with British tastes and British appearance. So a cultural transformation began in India. But after revolt of 1857, these Britishers, they turned into paternal despot. It means that from 1857 onwards, the Britishers deliberately practiced the policy of despotism. They deliberately delayed, didn't recognize the ability or the rights of the Indian to self-govern themselves. And they claimed that their despotic rule was for the betterment and benefit of the Indians. And therefore, 1857 till the 1905 is considered as the high noon of British imperialism, because over here, the British, they acted as paternal despot. However, all through this more than 100 years of British rule, introduction of Western education, English language, political unification, introduction of railways, postal telegraph, it led to emergence of a middle class. Now this middle class was well aware of the happenings in Europe, and they also started becoming conscious of racial discrimination, and this stimulated national consciousness. So in the second half of the 19th century, Indians started becoming conscious of their own identity, of their own nationality. Under the influence of liberalism, the early nationalists came together and Indian National Congress was formed. The Indian National Congress believed in constitutional form of politics. So they aimed at passing resolutions via prayers and petitions so as to bring about constitutional reforms. However, after the disappointment following the Indian Councils Act of 1892, we saw a distinct form of nationalism started emerging in India. A nationalism which was more closer to romanticism, to religion. So in India, the revivalism started gaining political expression. And in the decade of 1890s, we witnessed a new form of idea of India gaining prominence. The writings of Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, the famous song Vande Mataram, and subsequently the ideas put forth by Lokmanya Tilak and ultimately Aurobindo shall coin the term Bharat Mata. So for the Indians, the idea of India was spiritual, akin to the mother goddess Bharat Mata. So as we enter the 20th century, Indians, they experienced a form of revivalism, discovery of Indus Valley civilizations, cult of Bharat Mata. It instilled pride amongst the Indians. And we saw that there was also the anti-partition movement, the rise of revolutionary terrorism, the disappointment by the Indian Councils Act of 1909, the policy of divide and rule by the British via separate electorates, the Congress split of 1907, World War I. All these were the backgrounds, all these were the backdrop within which Gandhian form of politics came to the forefront in India. Rise of Gandhi is studied by historians from various schools. The Gandhian philosophy of Sarvodaya, Ahimsa, Satya, and Satyagraha became a potent weapon not only to defy the British rule but also to come up with a consensus-based idea of India known as Swaraj. For Gandhi, Swaraj was not merely a form of state which governed its subject, but Swaraj was when every individual was able to realize self-rule. It meant more of emancipation. And on 15th August 1947, India attained independence. It became a sovereign nation state. But if we inspect, if we study, we see that post 1947, almost all political and administrative institutions continued as it is. You will find out that all political traditions, for example, the parliament, could be traced back to the Charter Act of 1853. The bureaucracy, it could be traced back to the Cornwallis Code of 1793. Then we have the Charter Act of 1853 and the Lee Commission. The legal code in the form of the Macaulay Code of 1834, and subsequently the post-1857 military reforms. So on 15th of August 1947, there was an element of continuity, but there was also an element of change. Prior to 1947, the entire ideology of the state was characterized by colonialism. What do we mean by colonialism? There was a government of India prior to 1947. Before independence also there was government of India. Before independence also there was a full-fledged bureaucracy formulating policies. But prior to independence, this government formulated policies in the interest of the British. So the society and economy was made subservient to the interests of the British. Therefore, the ideology of government of India was called colonial in character, subservient to the imperial British Raj. And when we talk about post-1947, after India became sovereign, now the ideology of the state, it got transformed. From making the society subservient to the interests of the British, now the state was supposed to act for the upliftment of the society, uplifting the economy. So rather than the society and economy being made subservient to the polity acted now after 1457, the polity was to act as a means for the society and economy. So post 1947, the ideology of the state transformed from colonial to national. Therefore, 15th of August 1947 is an important watermark in the history of modern India. So Gandhi and his forms, in the form of the non-cooperation movement, followed by the civil disobedience movement, and subsequently the Congress forming government in 1937 for 28 months. All these had truly transformed the Congress into a mass-based political party, and Gandhi as a major influencer in the ideology of India. Congress kept emphasizing that India shall always be committed to civil and political rights of all its citizens. It shall be a truly modern nation state characterized by secularism, tolerance, pluralism, rights to the minorities, universal electorate, universal suffrage. And it was also stated that India shall emerge as a democratic republic. In 1940s, we witnessed that there was a rise of communal tendencies, especially after the Lahore Resolution that was passed in March 1940 by Muslim League. Following the Lahore Resolution, the Muslim League started demanding a separate state of Pakistan. Throughout the 1940s, the major contest was ideological, with Muslim League harping upon the two-nation theory and Congress remaining firm to the one single nation, that is the idea of India, that is all-inclusive. While all this went ahead, we saw a major battle taking place between ethnic nationalism and civic nationalism. The civic nationalism of Congress was challenged by the ethnic nationalism supported by the RSS. 1920s witnessed assertion of another form of nationalism in the form of Hindutva. The Hindutva form of nationalism led it to the formation of Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, which aimed at establishing India into a Hindu Raj. Hindu Mahasabha, which had already been established, now radicalized its approach and became more and more vocal towards Hindu revivalism and emergence of India as a Hindu Rashtra. It was against the Muslims and against the Congress idea of a plural India. In 1940, Hindu Mahasabha, Muslim League, they would vehemently oppose Congress and would stick to the idea of two-nation theory. So 1940s witnessed a major battle between the civic nationalism or the idea of India as being supported by the Congress on the basis of civic nationalism and the idea of Bharatvarsha or Pakistan as being supported and upheld by the Muslim League and the Hindu Mahasabha. Muslim League, a communal political organization formed on 31st of December 1906, which had merely about 1300 members by 1927, will go on to have more than 50 lakh members only in Bengal alone by 1944. In fact, Muslim League, which was not voted in the elections of 1937, would go on to win 75% of the seats that were reserved for the Muslims. What was the reason for this rise of Muslim League? Was it an indication that Muslim League was becoming more and more successful in its rhetoric of Islam in danger and alienating the Muslims from the idea of India that Congress had been promoting? While we study this, we realize that 1940s Muslim League became more and more vocal with respect to the demand for a separate Pakistan. Its performance in the provincial elections of 1946 gave it the necessary backing for the demand of separate statehood. And this enabled them to launch a direct action day and subsequent unleash violence throughout the country so as to demand a separate state of Pakistan. In order to reduce the bloodshed and violence that was being caused, the country was ultimately partitioned on 15th of August 1947. Although the country was partitioned on 15th of August 1947, the Congress leadership wanted to make sure that the idea of India that it had always upheld, it had always supported, remains intact, because communalism acted like a fire where one fueled another. They feared that the idea of Pakistan might fuel an idea of Hindu Rashtra, and Muslim League can become successful in justifying its two-nation theory rather than Congress idea of a united India. On 15th of August 1947, two nation states were created. India and Pakistan. In fact, if you look at the state aspect of India and Pakistan, both had the same set of bureaucracy, both had the same set of political traditions, institutions, legal systems, and even the army. Everything was divided. So there was no difference between the state system of the two. And if you talk about the history, culture, demography, they had shared everything in the past. So what differed between India and Pakistan was the idea of nation. To summarize, both India and Pakistan were same states with a different idea of nation. Whereas Pakistan was a modern state with a medieval idea of nation, Islamic Republic. And India became a modern state with a modern idea of nation, a secular nation state. That forms the basic difference or the characteristic feature between India and Pakistan.